Okay, so in this video, we're going to be going over kind of like how to break down a really complex stream problem and then actually writing code for how to write a stream. Okay, so specifically, we'll be writing the stream numlists. And so what that'll look like is for the first 10 outputs, for example, will look something like this, where the first list is a single list of 1, and then a list of 2 elements of 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4, so on and so forth. Okay? But in order to get there, it's quite complex, so I'm just going to break it down piece by piece to help you build up to this bigger, more complex stream. So, first thing I'm going to have you do, before I have you just dive right in and write numlists, is I'm going to have you write one lists. So what this stream should look like is it should be a stream of 1 and then 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, kind of similar to this, but just with ones for now. And then we'll build up to the bigger problem. This is a good place to pause and try that out for a little while, see how far you get. And there are multiple ways to do this. I'm just going to go over the way that I did it. So I'll just give you a few more seconds. Okay, now I'm going to go over how I went about this. So first of all, we see that it's a variable. It's not a function, right? So I'm just going to be define one lists. Okay. So one list is a stream, right? So just right off the bat, I know I'm going to be making a stream using constream. So what's the first element of the stream? Because that's where I want to start. Maybe I don't know for sure if this is what I'm going to keep, but I know just right off the bat that the first element is going to be 1. This kind of gives me, I'm kind of going more towards just using this as my first element because I seem to build off it, right? Because in each one of these, there is like an inner list of 1 in here, right? So maybe I can use that to build my stream. So for this first element, I'm just going to do list of 1. Okay, what about the rest of my stream? This is the hard part, right? So let's think. So what's the difference between this one and this one? Well, as we just said, it has this inner one in here, right? So why don't I do something like, why don't I just cons 1 onto the stream coder of ones list. Right, that seems to make sense because one list is this thing, right? And so if I cons 1 onto the stream coder of ones list, then I should get this, right? But the stream coder of ones list is what we're defining right now, right? And so that won't really work, right? And again, const stream, this needs to be a stream itself, right? So this can't just be a list of 1 and then this other part of the list, right? So that won't work. So what if instead, this seems kind of complex, right? We seem to be building, what if we used some built-in stream function that we have defined for us? So let's think, so what do we have? So we have interleave. So would interleave be useful here? It would be useful if we already had a different stream that started with list of 1, 1 right off the bat. But then again, how would we build to this bigger one, right? How would I go from 1 to 1, 1, 1, 1, right? This is the part that we're struggling with. So interleave probably wouldn't do us much good here. What about filter? Filter is more for filtering through a stream that already exists, but the stream doesn't exist yet. So again, before we tried to use a cons, right? Because that seemed oh, I'm just consing a 1 onto this one, right? But I don't want to just cons a 1 onto this one. I also want to cons a 1 onto this one, and then this one, and then all the other ones, right? So since I want to do this to each list, I want to use stream map. So the key to this one is using stream map. And so what did we just say we wanted to do? We wanted to cons 1 onto all of these ones that exist, right? So remember, our first part of the stream is a list of 1. So I know my first element is a list of 1, so why don't I just map a lambda that just cons 1 onto this ones list. Okay, so what does this do? So the first element will be a list of 1, right? First element will be a list of 1, okay? And then I'm going to, the next element is going to be the first element of this stream map. So what's the first element of the stream map? Well, it's the first element of ones list with 1 cons onto it. What's the first element of ones list? It's a list of 1. What's a list of 1 with 1 cons onto it? That's 1, 1. So then what's the next element of ones list? It's 1, 1. And then what's the third element? Well, it's the second element with 1 cons onto it. So that would be 1, 1, 1. And then so on from there. So congratulations, we've done our ones list. So we can use this to build up to our bigger problem of building num lists. So then what do I want to do next? This might seem like a bit of a tangent, but the next thing I want you guys to do is try to write map plus 1. So what map plus 1 does is it takes in a list and returns that a new list with all of the same elements except for their plus 1. So if map plus 1 takes in the list of 1, 2, 3, it should output 2, 3, 4. So just take a few seconds for that. Okay, and unpause or whatever. I'm going to go over what I did. So this is pretty easy, right? Because we have this built-in map function. So if I wanted to do map plus 1, takes in a list, then I just want to map plus 1 onto each element in that list. So I can just use the built-in map function. And then this lambda takes in an x and then just adds 1 to it. Okay. And then so this will output. It'll take in this list and it'll just map plus 1 to each thing in it. And then it'll output that list. Okay, there's that. Seems simple enough. Seemed kind of random that I did that, but I'm just breaking down this bigger problem into smaller pieces, not only because it'll help you kind of like walk through it and kind of think about each individual part of this bigger problem, but also kind of like maybe make these bigger problems kind of look less intimidating. So what now? So this could be useful, right? Because we have, we seem to be adding, 1 onto each sequential list, right? So 1 turns to 2 to 3 to 4. And then we have this ones list, which seems to have the same shape as this. So then the only thing is that while this maps plus 1 to each individual element in a list, we'd like to map plus 1 onto each individual element in a list in an entire stream, right? We want to add plus 1 to all of this, and then plus 2 to all of this, and plus 3 to all of this, right? So how the next procedure we try to do is stream map plus 1. And so what this does is this takes in a stream of lists and adds 1 to each element in each list. So for example, if I gave stream map plus 1 the ones list, so if I gave it this list right here, it should output 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Okay, so go ahead and take a few seconds, and you can definitely you can use what we've defined already. So far we've defined ones list, and we've defined map plus 1. Okay, so go ahead and just think of, and you just have to define this procedure. It doesn't have to look like this. Okay, so this is a procedure. So if I'm defining stream map plus 1, it should be a function. So it should take in a stream. Okay? And so then this takes in a stream and it does something to each element in the stream we put in, right? So since we put in ones list, the ones list looked like 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, but then this result now looks like 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. So since we do something to every element in the stream we input, we're probably going to want to use stream map. And then this is also called stream map plus 1. It's probably also a good heads up. So what does this stream map do? Well, the stream map will be over S, right? So at the end it's going to be over this stream S, right? But what is the function that we do to S? Well, for each element, we add 1 to each element, right? And each element is a list. Because again, stream map plus 1 takes in a stream of lists. So do we have something that adds 1 to everything in a list? Yeah, we just defined that above. So what we can do is we can map a lambda that takes in an x, and then it'll map plus 1 over each one of these elements. So what does this do? So stream map plus 1 takes in a stream, and then it will map something that applies map plus 1 to each list in the stream. So if the first list I look at is this list 1, right? Stream map looks at each individual element in S. It'll feed it into this function. So then we're throwing the list 1 into map plus 1, which just adds 1 to each element in this list. This list will turn into a list of 2. And then same with if we have the next list, which is list 1, 1. It'll throw that list into this lambda, and then it'll throw that list into map plus 1. So then every element in here will have 1 added to it, and so it'll turn into 2, 2. So you can see kind of how we're building to this bigger problem, right? So we went from, just having this list of 1s, and now we have a way to add 1 to each thing in the list, right? Which is kind of what's happening here. So you can see how we have like the first element right here, right? Right here in our ones list. That's the first element of num's list. And then the second element, well, we just made something that looked really, really similar to that in the stream map plus 1, this 2, 2, right? So kind of thinking about that, go ahead and take a whack at numList. So again, numList is a procedure that doesn't take in anything. And it should output something that looks like 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4. And again, feel free to use any of the procedures or streams defined above. The things we have defined are stream map plus 1, map plus 1, and ones list. Okay, so feel free to use any of those when you're defining this. And again, numList, whenever it's called, should output exactly this every time. So go ahead and pause and take a while to think about that. Okay, so go ahead and unpause. And so right now I'm just going to go over, defining this, finally getting to define this numList. Okay, so again, this is a procedure that takes in no arguments. So like we were saying before, this first element we keep seeing, right? The first time we saw it was in ones list. So even though this nums list doesn't take anything, it would be really nice if it did. Like it'd be really nice if like nums list could take in a stream, right? Because then we could just input ones list and then just like have our first element right away by just taking the car of ones list, right? So why don't we just cheat a little bit and do just that? So how about we define a helper that takes in the stream, right? And while I don't know what goes in this helper yet, right, I could do something like, oh, I'm just going to call helper of ones list, right? If I know right away I'm going to do that, that automatically gives me my first element, this 1, right? Because that's the first element of ones list. So right away we have our first thing we should write. So helper, so nums list is a stream. So how do I make a stream? Well, we do const string. And what did we just say that first element should be? Well, we have this ones list now. So why don't I just do stream car of this S that we just got? Because I know I'm going to call it with ones list. And then right away we have our first element. Great, awesome. Okay, so then now what? What do we want next? So the next thing we want is this 2, 2. So where did we see that before? Well, we saw that 2, 2 right here when we were doing stream map plus 1. So if we have this ones list right here, why don't we just do that, right? Because this is the next element we want. So why don't we just do stream map? Okay, so let's do stream map of what should we map over? Well, we want to turn this next element, because right now we have ones list, so right now we have 1, and we'd like to get 2, 2. So maybe we don't want to just stream map, right? We should use this thing we defined up here, right? Because this seems to do it for us. This just gives it the 2, 2 right away. So instead of doing just plain stream map, because we don't want to end up just rewriting this function, let's just do stream map plus 1 of what? Well, we don't want to just do it of S, because what is S? S is ones list. So if I did stream map plus 1 of S, the first element of that would be 2, right? Because it would be the first element of S. So then we want this to be 2, 2, right? So then instead of S, we should do stream map plus 1 of the stream cutter of S. Because the stream cutter of S is what? 1, 1, right? And so doing stream map plus 1 of 1, 1, the first element of that will be 2, 2, which is exactly what we want. But what will the rest of the elements be? Well, if we do stream map of plus 1 of stream cutter of S, the next element will be what? Two, 2, 2, right? Because S is ones list, right? So it'll first map, plus 2 to this 2 element list, and it'll be plus 1 to this 2 element list, and then plus 1 to the 3 element list after that. So it'd be nice if, okay, so we have these 2, 2s, 2, 2, 2, 2. It'd be nice if we could keep adding. So if we could add from like here on, and then add another one from here on. Well, let's think about what helper does, right? Helper spits out the first element of here, of the S it's given, and then it adds 1 to the rest. So right now we want this first element, and then we want to add 1 to the rest. So instead of just having the rest of this stream be just the stream output by stream map plus 1, we actually just want to throw this back into our helper. And why is that? What does that do? Well, let's draw this out, okay? So we have numlists, right? We have this helper, okay? So numlist, we know the first element is going to be this list of 1, because that's what we gave it. We gave it ones list. And so then what will the rest be? The rest will be whatever is output by helper when given stream map plus 1 of the stream cutter of S. So first of all, what's the stream cutter of S? Well, the stream cutter of S is 1, 1, right? Because this is, again, S is this ones list, right? So then what is stream map plus 1? Well, the first element of that should be, if we're given this as its first element, the first element of this should be what? 2, 2. And so then it's the helper of this stream, right? where the first element is 2, 2. So the car of this whole thing is this 2, 2 we just did, right? Okay, all right. So then the rest of that, so again, we did stream car, where it was this 1, and then we did the stream map plus 1 of the stream coulter of S. And so stream map plus 1, we decided was 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, right? And so we just output this car, right? We did that right here, so we know that's the next element of num's list. And then what do we do to the rest? Well, we do stream map plus 1 over it. So this is the coulter. So then stream map plus 1 will turn all of these into 3s. Okay, and then we feed that right back into helper. And so then what does helper output? Outputs the first of that stream. So then we know the next element is 3, 3, 3. And then again, what do we do to the coulter? We feed it into stream map plus 1. So that will turn this into 4, 4, 4, 4. And then what do we feed that to? We feed that to the helper. And the helper, again, makes a stream where the first is the first of the thing it put in. So that means that the next element would be 4, 4, 4, 4. So this stuff is kind of confusing, but a big takeaway of this is just learning how to break down these complex, sometimes intimidating problems. So we broke this down into, okay, well, looking at this, we know we're going to need a pattern where we have 1 in the first list, 2 in the second list, 3 in the third list, and so on. So we did that by doing 1's list, but that follows that pattern. What other pattern is present in here? Well, we're adding 1 onto each subsequent list, right? All of the elements are getting 1 added to them. So we broke that down by doing a map plus 1 and then doing a stream map plus 1 that added 1 onto all of the elements in a list in each subsequent stream. The last tricky part was adding 1 here, adding 2 here, adding 3 here. We broke that down into adding 1 to all of these, and then adding another 1 to all of these, and then adding another 1 to all of these. And so what did that do? Well, by adding 1 to like a bunch of 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, we got a bunch of 2s. That allowed us to output this part of the list. Well, what did adding 1 again to that do? Well, the equivalent of adding 1 twice is like adding 2. So that allowed us to get our 3s. And then we added 1 again. And the equivalent of adding 1 3 times is like as if we had just added 3 to those 4 1s we had here originally. And so that was what finally allowed us to put together to get this nums list. Okay, so, and this is kind of complex. Feel free to just kind of like walk through this code by yourself, pause the video lots of times, but make sure you kind of understand here. So again, the big takeaways of this are breaking down the problem into all of its parts, identifying all of the patterns that are happening here and kind of trying to break that down. You don't have to define all of these separately. I could have done it in, you can do it within one function, but sometimes it's easier to kind of like break it apart and make it more clean to understand.